The sky above Velar Prime had not been quiet for 3 days now. Fire rained from above in bright orange streaks, and the ground shook every few minutes like the planet itself was afraid. Buildings that had stood for 1,000 years crumbled like sand. Streets that were once full of life were now full of dust and silence. Yuna stood at the top of the communications tower, the tallest building still standing in the capital city. She was not from this world. She was human, a diplomat from Earth, sent here 5 years ago to maintain the friendship between humans and the Valari people. She had come here expecting a quiet life of meetings and handshakes. She never expected war. The Draken Empire had arrived without warning. Their warships filled the sky like a dark cloud, hundreds of them, each one larger than anything the Valari had ever built. The Valari were not warriors. They were scientists, healers, and teachers. They had no army. They had no fleet worth mentioning. And now, they were being destroyed. Yuna pressed her hand against the glass window. Down below, she could see Valari families running through the streets, carrying their children, their faces full of fear. She had lived among these people for 5 years. She had eaten their food, learned their language, laughed at their jokes. They were kind, gentle people. They did not deserve this. Her communicator buzzed. She looked down at the screen. It was a message from the Valari council leader, a tall and soft-spoken elder named Doran. His voice came through broken and tired. "Ambassador Yuna," he said, "we cannot hold the shield generators for much longer. Once they fall, the Draken will land ground forces. We have no way to stop them." Yuna closed her eyes. She had already sent 14 messages to Earth in the last 2 days. None of them had been answered. The distance between Valar Prime and Earth was enormous. Even with faster-than-light communication, messages took time, and she had no idea if anyone was even listening. "I will try again," she told Doran. "I will send another message." She walked across the room to the long-range transmitter. It was old Valari technology, not designed for reaching across half the galaxy. But Yuna had modified it herself, using parts from her own ship. She had made it stronger, louder. She hoped it was loud enough. She sat down, took a deep breath, and began recording. "This is Ambassador Yuna of Earth, stationed on Velar Prime. I am sending this message to the United Terran Council, to anyone who can hear me. The Valari homeworld is under full-scale attack by the Draken Empire. The Valari have no military. They cannot defend themselves. Civilian casualties are already in the hundreds of thousands. I am requesting immediate assistance. Any ship, any help, anything at all. Please respond." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. She did not know if it would reach Earth. She did not know if anyone would care even if it did. Humans had their own problems, their own wars, their own politics. Why would they send help to a small alien world on the edge of the galaxy? But Yuna remembered something. She remembered why she had been sent here in the first place. 12 years ago, a terrible sickness had swept across Earth. They called it the Gray Fever. It killed millions in the first month. Hospitals overflowed. Governments panicked. Scientists worked day and night, but could not find a cure. Humanity was on its knees. And then, the Valari came. They had arrived in a single small medical ship. No weapons, no army, just doctors and medicine. They shared everything they had, their knowledge, their technology, their cures. They asked for nothing in return. Within weeks, the Gray Fever was gone. The Valari had saved humanity, and then they simply went home. That was why Yuna was here. Earth had sent her as a gesture of thanks, a permanent ambassador, to show the Valari that humans had not forgotten. And now, as fire rained from the sky, Yuna wondered if that gratitude still meant anything. Thousands of light years away, on the other side of the galaxy, the message arrived. It came through the deep space relay network, bouncing from one station to the next, growing weaker with each jump. By the time it reached Earth's orbital communication hub, it was barely a whisper. But it was enough. Commander Tejo was on duty that night. He sat in the monitoring room of Terran Command, surrounded by screens and blinking lights. It was a quiet shift. Most of the other officers had gone to sleep. Tejo was drinking his fourth cup of coffee and reading old reports when the alert sounded. He set down his cup and looked at the screen. A priority signal. From the outer sectors, he played it back. Yuna's voice filled the room. It was small and distant, broken by static, but every word was clear. Tejo listened without moving. When the message ended, he played it again, and then again. He leaned forward and pulled up the file on Velar Prime. He read through the history. The gray fever, the Valari medical ship, the cure, the millions of lives saved. He read all of it. Tejo was a soldier. He had served for 20 years. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. He knew what war looked like. And he knew what the Draken Empire was capable of. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply destroyed. He stood up, picked up the secure line, and called Admiral Suho. The phone rang 3 times before a deep, tired voice answered. "This better be important, Tejo." "Sir," Tejo said, "we just received a distress signal from Velar Prime. The Draken are attacking. The Valari have no military capability. Ambassador Yuna is requesting any available assistance." There was a long silence on the other end. "Velar Prime," Suho repeated slowly. "Yes, sir." Another pause. Tejo could hear the Admiral breathing. "Send me the full transmission," Suho said, "and wake up the war room." "Yes, sir." Tejo ended the call and forwarded the message. Then he sat back down and stared at the screen. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know what the Admiral would decide. But something in Suho's voice told him that this was not going to be a small response. On Velar Prime, the explosions continued. The shield generators flickered. Yuna sat alone in the tower, watching the sky burn, and waited for an answer that she was not sure would ever come. Admiral Suho did not go back to sleep that night. He sat at his desk in his quarters, still wearing the old gray shirt he slept in, and listened to Yuna's message 7 times. Each time, he heard something new. The fear in her voice, the explosions in the background, the way she said anything at all, like she had already given up hope. He opened the file on the Valari. He had read it before, years ago, but now he read it again, slowly, carefully, like a man studying a debt he owed. The gray fever, the millions dead, the panic, and then the Valari, arriving in their small ship with no weapons and no demands, carrying nothing but medicine and kindness. Suho remembered the gray fever. He had been a young officer back then, stationed in Seoul. His mother had gotten sick. The hospitals were full. There were no beds, no medicine, no hope. He remembered sitting beside her on the floor of their apartment, holding her hand, watching her breathe less and less. And then the cure came. The Valari cure. His mother lived. She was still alive today, 83 years old, growing tomatoes in her backyard. He closed the file and sat in the dark for a long time. At exactly 4 in the morning, Suho walked into the war room. It was a wide, circular space, deep inside Terran Command, filled with screens and maps and communication panels. The lights were bright. The air smelled like coffee and tension. 12 senior officers were already seated around the table. They had been pulled from their beds by Tejo's call, and most of them still looked half asleep. Suho stood at the head of the table. He did not sit down. "Play the message," he said. Tejo pressed a button, and Yuna's voice filled the room. Every officer listened in silence. When it ended, no one spoke. Suho looked around the table. The Valari homeworld is under attack by the Draken Empire. They have no military, they have no fleet. Their civilian population is being destroyed. Our ambassador is on the ground and requesting assistance. A woman near the end of the table spoke up. Her name was Unji, and she was the head of strategic operations. She was sharp, careful, and not easily moved. "Admiral," she said, "the Draken have an estimated 400 warships in that sector. Sending a small relief force would be pointless. They would be destroyed before they even reached orbit." "I know," Suho said. "Then what are you proposing?" Unji asked. Suho looked at her. "I am proposing that we do not send a small relief force." The room went quiet. Another officer, a broad-shouldered man named Dongwu, leaned forward. He was the commander of the 3rd Battle Group, one of the largest fleets in the Terran Navy. "Admiral, are you suggesting a full deployment?" "I am suggesting Protocol Crimson Dawn," Suho said. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in the room knew what Protocol Crimson Dawn meant. It was the highest level of military mobilization in the Terran Navy. It had only been activated twice in human history. Once during the Mars Rebellion, and once during the border war with the Kasari Dominion. It meant every ship, every fleet, every available pilot, soldier, and officer. Unji shook her head slowly. "Sir, with respect, the Valari are not a military ally. We have no formal defense treaty with them. Protocol Crimson Dawn is reserved for threats to Earth or its colonies." "I am aware of the regulations," Suho said calmly. "Then how do you justify this?" Unji asked. Suho placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Something that was not anger, but something deeper than anger. 12 years ago, he said, humanity was dying. We had no cure, we had no hope, and the Valari came to us. They did not ask if we had a defense treaty. They did not check if we were a military ally. They did not run calculations on whether saving us was worth the cost. They came because we were dying, and they could help. That was enough for them. He paused and looked at every face around the table. Now they are dying, and we can help. That is enough for me. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Dongwu nodded slowly. "I will have the 3rd Battle Group ready within 6 hours." Another officer, a quiet woman named Hyun, who commanded the Deep Space Carrier Fleet, raised her hand. "The 7th Fleet can be mobilized in 8 hours. I will begin recall immediately." One by one, the officers around the table gave their commitments. The 1st Fleet, the 4th Strike Wing, the 9th Patrol Division, the 2nd Rapid Response Group. Suho listened to each one, nodding, writing nothing down. He would remember every word. When the last officer had spoken, Suho straightened up. "Total count," he said. Taeho checked his screen. 1,214 warships, sir, plus support vessels, medical frigates, and supply transports. Total fleet size, approximately 1,500. Unji stared at the number on her screen. 1,500 ships. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled in one place. It was everything they had. "Admiral," she said quietly, "if we send all of this and something happens to Earth while they are gone, then we will deal with that when it happens," Suho said. "But I will not sit here and do nothing while good people die because we were afraid." Unji looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I will coordinate the logistics." Suho turned to Taeho. "Send a message to Ambassador Yuna. Short and clear." "What should it say, sir?" Then he said, "Tell her, hold on, we are coming." Taeho typed the message and sent it. Across the base, alarms began to sound. Not the panicked alarms of an attack, but the deep, steady tone of mobilization. Pilots ran to their ships. Engineers powered up engines that had been cold for months. Mechanics loaded weapons and checked shields. Supply officers filled cargo holds with food, medicine, and ammunition. The Terran Navy was waking up. All of it. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, massive warships began to move. Battlecruisers longer than city blocks turned slowly in the darkness. Carriers opened their launch bays. Destroyers formed into tight formations. The sky above Earth filled with the glow of 1,000 engines. Dongwu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, and watched the fleet assemble through the wide front window. He had been a soldier for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "All ships report ready," his first officer said. Dongwu nodded. "Set course for Velar Prime. Maximum speed." Across the fleet, every captain gave the same order. One by one, the ships engaged their hyperdrives. The stars stretched into long white lines, and then the fleet was gone, leaving nothing behind but silence and the fading glow of their engines. On Velar Prime, Yuna received the message. She read it once, then twice, then pressed the communicator to her chest and cried. Just 4 words, but they were enough. "Hold on, we are coming." She wiped her eyes and stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the burning sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the fire and the smoke and the darkness, help was on its way. She did not know how much help. She did not know what the humans would send. A ship, maybe 2. A small patrol group, if she was lucky. Anything would be better than nothing. She had no idea what was actually coming. The Draken fleet had been in orbit around Velar Prime for 5 days now. 412 warships hung in the darkness above the planet, like a ring of iron teeth. They were ugly ships, built not for beauty, but for destruction. Their hulls were black and scarred, covered in the marks of 100 conquests. The Draken did not repair their ships after battle. They wore the damage like trophies. The commander of the Draken fleet was a tall, heavy creature named Voss. He stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Ironclaw, and looked down at Velar Prime with bored yellow eyes. The planet was beautiful. Blue oceans, green land, white clouds. It reminded him of other planets he had taken. They were always beautiful before he was finished with them. "Status report," he growled. His tactical officer, a smaller Draken with a crooked spine, checked the readings. "The planetary shields are failing. Generator 4 is offline. Generator 7 is at 12%. We estimate full collapse within 6 hours. Voss smiled. His teeth were black and sharp. "Good. Prepare the landing forces. Once the shields fall, I want troops on the ground within the hour. Start with the capital city." "And the civilians?" the tactical officer asked. Voss waved a clawed hand. "The usual." That was how the Draken fought. There was no mercy in it, no negotiation. They came, they took, and whatever was left behind was not worth taking. Far below, on the surface, Yuna had not slept in 2 days. She had moved from the communications tower to an underground bunker beneath the Volari Council building. The bunker was crowded with hundreds of Volari civilians, mostly families with children. The air was thick and warm. The lights flickered every time a bomb struck above. Doran sat beside her on a metal bench. The old Volari leader looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His hands trembled when he spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. "The shields will not last much longer," he said. "When they fall, the Draken will come. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We have nothing." Yuna put her hand on his arm. "I sent the message. Earth received it. They said they are coming." Doran looked at her with tired, kind eyes. "How many ships can they send? 1? 2? The Draken have over 400. Even if your people are brave, what can a handful of ships do against that?" Yuna did not answer. She did not have an answer. She had asked herself the same question 100 times. She had imagined a small human patrol ship arriving, seeing the size of the Draken fleet, and turning around. She would not blame them. No one would. "We just have to hold on a little longer." Doran nodded slowly, but his eyes said he did not believe it. In the darkness of space, far from Velar Prime, something was happening. The Draken had long-range sensors. They were crude but effective. They could detect ships entering a star system from light years away. The sensor officer on the Iron Claw watched his screen with half-closed eyes, bored, expecting nothing. No one was coming to help the Velari. Everyone in the galaxy knew that. And then his screen lit up. He blinked. He leaned closer. He tapped the screen, thinking it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. "Commander Voss," he said, his voice suddenly thin and high. Voss turned. "What?" "I am detecting hyperspace signatures. Incoming." Voss walked over to the sensor station. "How many?" The sensor officer stared at his screen. His hands began to shake. "I am still counting, Commander." "What do you mean, still counting?" "The signatures are. They are still appearing. Hundreds of them. They are not stopping." Voss grabbed the officer by the shoulder and looked at the screen himself. His yellow eyes went wide. The screen was filled with bright dots, each one a ship dropping out of hyperspace. They appeared in waves, first 50, then 100, then 200. The number kept climbing. "What is this?" Voss whispered. "They are human signatures, Commander. Terran Navy." And then they arrived. The sky above Velar Prime split open like a curtain being torn apart. The first ships appeared as flashes of white light, bright enough to be seen from the surface. Then more came, and more, and more. They poured out of hyperspace in perfect formation, row after row, line after line, until the space around the planet was filled with them. Battle cruisers with guns the size of buildings, carriers loaded with thousands of fighters, destroyers fast and sharp like knives, heavy frigates with shields that could stop a star, medical ships and supply transports followed behind, protected in the center of the formation. And at the front, leading them all, was the Indomitable, the flagship of Commander Dongwu and the 3rd Battle Group. The Draken fleet, which had seemed so massive and so terrifying just minutes ago, now looked small. It looked like a handful of stones facing a tidal wave. On the surface, the ground shook, but it was not from bombs. It was from the sheer energy of 1,200 ships entering orbit. Yuna ran out of the bunker and looked up. The sky was full of light, not the orange light of fire, but the bright, clean white light of human engines. She could not breathe. She just stood there, looking up, her mouth open, her eyes filling with tears. "What is that?" Doran asked, stepping out behind her. He looked up and froze. "Those are human ships," Yuna whispered. "Those are all human ships." "All of them?" Doran's voice cracked. "But there are so many. How many did they send?" Yuna shook her head. She could not count them. She did not need to. She understood now what Suho had done. He had not sent help. He had sent everything. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Minji stood at the communications console. She was young for a captain, barely 35, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that never wavered. Dongwu had chosen her personally for this role. She was the best communicator in the fleet, not because she talked a lot, but because when she spoke, people listened. "Open a broadband channel," she said. "All frequencies. I want every ship in this system to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Minji straightened her uniform. She took one breath, and then she spoke. "Attention, Draken Fleet. This is Captain Minji of the United Terran Navy, representing the full military authority of Earth and its territories. You are currently engaged in an unprovoked attack on Velar Prime, a world under the protection of humanity. You will cease all hostile operations immediately. You will withdraw your forces from this system. You will not fire another shot. You have one chance to leave." Her voice was calm, steady. There was no anger in it, no threat, just a simple statement of fact, spoken the way someone might read the time. On the Iron Claw, Voss listened to the transmission. Around him, his officers were frozen. The bridge was silent except for the low hum of the engines and the steady beeping of sensors counting human ships. Voss stared at the screen. 1,200 warships. The Terran Navy had sent 1,200 warships to defend a planet that was not theirs, for a people who were not their own. "This is not possible," he said. "Why would they do this? The Volari are nothing to them." His tactical officer looked at him. "Commander, what are your orders?" Voss clenched his fists. He was Draken. He did not run. He had never run. He had conquered 30 worlds and burned twice as many. No one had ever made him retreat. He looked at the screen one more time. The human fleet hung in space like a wall of steel and light. They were not moving. They were not attacking. They were waiting. Waiting for his answer. Voss bared his teeth. "We do not run from anyone. Power up all weapons. All ships, combat formation. We fight." But they obeyed. On the Indomitable, Dongwu watched the Draken fleet shift into battle formation. He shook his head slowly. "They are not leaving," Minji said quietly. Dongwu picked up the fleet-wide communicator. His voice was deep and steady, and carried across every ship in the fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Dongwu. The Draken have refused to withdraw. Weapons free. Protect the planet. Protect the people. Do your jobs." 1,200 ships powered their weapons at once. The sound, if there had been sound in space, would have been like thunder. The battle for Velar Prime was about to begin. The first shot came from the Draken. A bright red beam fired from the Iron Claw aimed straight at the Indomitable. It struck the flagship's forward shields and scattered like water hitting a rock. The shields did not even flicker. Dongwu did not flinch. He stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back and watched the red beam fade. "That was their answer," he said calmly. Then he gave the order. "All ships, engage." What happened next was something the galaxy would talk about for a very long time. The human fleet moved as one, not like individual ships acting on their own, but like a single living thing, a machine with 1,200 parts that all knew exactly what to do. They had trained for this. They had practiced formations, attack patterns, and defensive screens for years. And now, for the first time, all of it came together at once. 200 fast, agile ships that shot forward from the main formation like arrows released from a bow. They split into groups of 10 and targeted the outer edges of the Draken fleet, hitting their flanks from 3 directions at once. Their weapons were precise and fast, striking engines and weapon systems, crippling ships without destroying them when possible. The Draken fought back. They were not weak. Their ships were heavily armed, and their crews were experienced killers who had won many wars. Red beams and plasma bursts filled the space between the two fleets. Several human destroyers took heavy hits. 2 were destroyed in the first 10 minutes, their crews lost in bright flashes of light. But the humans did not stop. They did not slow down. They did not hesitate. Behind the destroyers came the heavy frigates, forming a wide curved wall between the Draken fleet and the planet below. Their job was not to attack. They activated their shields at maximum power and linked them together, creating a barrier that stretched across hundreds of kilometers of space. Any Draken shot aimed at the surface of Velar Prime hit the shield wall instead. Admiral Suho had given Dongwu one instruction before the fleet left Earth. Not one bomb reaches the surface, not one. Dongwu intended to keep that promise. From inside the bunker on Velar Prime, the Volari watched and listened. They could hear the battle above, muffled by the atmosphere, but still loud enough to shake the walls. Yuna stood near the entrance, looking up through the broken ceiling at the sky. She could see flashes of light, brief and bright, like distant lightning. Each flash was a ship firing or a ship dying. Doran stood beside her. "Your people," he said softly, "they are dying up there. For us. Yuna nodded. Her throat was tight. Yes. Why? Doran asked. It was not a question born from confusion. It was a question born from wonder. Because that is what humans do, Yuna said. When someone helps us, we remember. And when they need us, we come. In space, the battle grew fiercer. The Draken had regrouped. Voss was a brutal commander, but he was not stupid. He pulled his fleet into a tight formation, concentrating their fire on a single point in the human line. If he could break through, he could reach the planet. For a moment, it almost worked. A section of the shield wall buckled under concentrated fire. 3 human frigates took critical damage. 1 broke apart, spilling debris into the darkness. The Draken pushed forward into the gap. But the humans adapted. They always adapted. That was what made them dangerous. Not their technology, which was good but not the best in the galaxy. Not their numbers, which were large but not unlimited. It was their ability to change, to react, to think in the middle of chaos and come up with something new. Captain Minji saw the gap from the bridge of the Indomitable. She did not wait for orders. She redirected 4 battlecruisers to fill the hole, and then she called in the carriers. Launch all fighter wings, she ordered. Focus on the breach point. Push them back. The carriers opened their bays, and thousands of small, fast human fighters poured into space like a swarm of bright insects. They flew in tight formations, weaving between the larger ships, targeting the Draken vessels that had pushed through the gap. The fighters were small, but their pilots were some of the best in the galaxy. Among them was Lieutenant Jiwan. He was 28 years old, born in Busan, and had been flying since he was 19. He was not the highest-ranked pilot in the fleet, but he was fast, smart, and he never panicked. Jiwan led Razor Squadron, a group of 12 fighters assigned to the most dangerous missions. Today, their mission was the most dangerous of all. They were going after the Iron Claw. Voss's command ship was the heart of the Draken fleet. It was massive, heavily armored, and surrounded by a ring of escort ships. Destroying it would not end the battle, but it would cripple the Draken's ability to coordinate. Without their commander, the Draken fleet would fall into confusion. Razor Squadron, form up on me, Jiwan said through his communicator. We are going straight in. Stay tight. Watch each other's backs. 12 ships flew in a V formation toward the center of the Draken fleet. Enemy fire filled the space around them. Jiwan dodged left, then right, then rolled his ship upside down to avoid a plasma burst that passed close enough to heat his cockpit glass. Razor 3, watch your left, he shouted. I see it, came the reply. A Draken fighter exploded a second later as Razor 3's guns tore through it. They pushed deeper. The fighting was close and brutal. Jiwan lost 2 pilots in the first 3 minutes, Razor 6 and Razor 9. Their ships vanished in bright flashes, there 1 second and gone the next. Jiwan gritted his teeth and kept flying. He would mourn later. Right now, he had a job to do. The Iron Claw came into view. It was enormous up close, a mountain of black metal bristling with weapons. Its hull was scarred and ugly. Jiwan could see the gun turrets tracking his squadron, turning toward them. Target the main engine array, Jiwan ordered. That is the weak point. All remaining ships, focus fire on my mark. His ship screamed toward the Iron Claw at full speed. The turrets fired, and bright red beams sliced through space around him. One clipped his left wing. Warning lights flashed across his dashboard. He ignored them. 3, 2, 1, mark. 10 fighters fired at once. Their shots converged on the same point, the junction between the Iron Claw's main engine and its hull. The armor buckled, then it cracked, then it broke. The explosion was enormous. The Iron Claw's engine array erupted in a ball of white fire that consumed the rear third of the ship. The massive vessel lurched sideways, spinning slowly, its power failing. Lights across its hull flickered and went dark. On the bridge of the Ironclaw, Voss was thrown to the floor. Alarms screamed around him. Sparks rained from the ceiling. His tactical officer was dead, crushed under a collapsed beam. "Damage report," Voss roared. "Main engines destroyed, Commander. Secondary power failing. Weapons offline. We are dead in space." Voss stared at the burning remains of his bridge. Outside the cracked window, he could see human ships everywhere. His fleet was falling apart. Without his command ship coordinating them, the Draken captains were fighting alone, making bad decisions, getting in each other's way. The humans were picking them off, one by one. It was over. He knew it was over. But he was Draken. He would not say it. Across the battlefield, the remaining Draken ships began to break formation. Some tried to flee, some kept fighting, but without coordination, without their commander, they were just individual ships against an organized fleet. The human destroyers hunted them down. The battle cruisers boxed them in. The fighters harassed them from every angle. Within 2 hours, the Draken fleet was reduced from 412 ships to less than 90. The surviving ships turned and ran, jumping into hyperspace in scattered, panicked groups, heading in different directions, not caring where they went as long as it was away from here. Dongwu watched them go. He did not order a pursuit. He did not need to. The message had been sent. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, the Draken are in full retreat. Secure the orbit. Begin planetary relief operations immediately. Medical ships, you are cleared to descend." On the surface, the shaking stopped. The sky grew quiet. And then, slowly, a new kind of light appeared above Velar Prime. Not the red light of weapons fire, but the soft blue glow of human medical ships descending through the atmosphere, coming down gently, like falling stars made of hope. Jiwan flew his damaged fighter back to the carrier. His left wing was nearly gone. His cockpit glass was cracked. His hands were still shaking. As he landed, he pulled off his helmet and sat in silence for a long time, thinking about Razor 6 and Razor 9, and about the people on the planet below who would live because of what they had done. The first human boots touched the surface of Velar Prime 6 hours after the last Draken ship fled the system. They were not soldiers. They were medics. The medical teams came down in white transport ships that landed softly in the open fields outside the capital city. Hundreds of men and women in gray uniforms stepped out, carrying supplies, equipment, and medicine. They moved quickly and quietly, setting up field hospitals with a speed that amazed the Valari, who watched from the ruins of their homes. A young medic named Sujin was among the first to arrive. She was 26 years old, small and steady-handed, with a calm face that made frightened people feel safe. She had trained for disaster relief on 3 different worlds, but nothing had prepared her for what she saw on Velar Prime. The capital city was barely recognizable. Entire neighborhoods had been flattened. Streets were covered in dust and broken glass. The air smelled of smoke and something worse that she did not want to name. Valari survivors wandered through the rubble with empty eyes, some carrying children, some carrying nothing at all. Sujin set up her station near the entrance to the underground bunkers where thousands of Valari had been hiding for days. When the bunker doors opened, the people who came out looked like ghosts, thin, pale, exhausted, and blinking in the sudden light. She treated burns, broken bones, dehydration, and shock. She worked for 14 hours straight without sitting down. When a Valari child, no more than 4 or 5 years old, grabbed her hand and would not let go, Sujin knelt down and held the child until she stopped trembling. She did not speak the Valari language. She did not need to. Across the planet, the same scene played out in hundreds of locations. Human medical ships landed near every major city and settlement. Engineers began repairing power stations and water systems. Supply transports delivered food and clean water. Communication teams restored the planetary network so families separated by the attack could find each other. Commander Dongwu remained in orbit aboard the Indomitable. He coordinated the relief effort from the bridge, directing ships and supplies with the same precision he had used during the battle. He had not slept in 36 hours, but he showed no signs of stopping. Captain Minji handled the communications. Messages poured in from every corner of the planet. Volari leaders expressing gratitude, survivors asking for help, local officials reporting damage. Minji organized each one, prioritized the most urgent, and made sure every call was answered. Teiho had arrived on one of the support ships. He walked through the ruined streets of the capital with a datapad in his hand, cataloging damage and coordinating repair teams. He stopped when he saw a Volari elder sitting alone on a pile of rubble, staring at the sky. "Are you all right?" Teiho asked. The elder looked at him. "I watched your ships arrive," he said, in slow, careful galactic standard. "I was on the roof of my home when the sky filled with light. I thought it was more Draken ships. I thought it was the end. And then I saw the markings on the hulls, human markings, and I fell to my knees." Teiho did not know what to say. He sat down beside the elder, and they watched the sky together in silence. In the bunker beneath the council building, Yuna finally allowed herself to rest. She sat against the wall, with her eyes closed, listening to the sounds of human voices above. Footsteps, equipment, orders being given, the sounds of help arriving. Doran found her there an hour later. He sat down beside her slowly, his old bones creaking. "I have just spoken with your Admiral Suho," Doran said. "By long-range communication." Yuna opened her eyes. What did he say? He said that Earth will keep a defense fleet stationed in our system until our world is rebuilt. He said the fleet will stay as long as we need them. He said... Doran paused, and his voice broke slightly. He said that the Volari are under the permanent protection of humanity, and that no one will ever attack our world again without facing the full strength of Earth. Yuna stared at him. He said that? Yes. Doran's eyes were wet. When I asked him why, he told me something I will never forget. He said, 12 years ago you came to us with one small ship and saved our entire species. We are simply returning the favor, and we always overpay. Yuna laughed. It was a small, tired laugh, but it was real. That sounded exactly like something Suho would say. In orbit, the human fleet settled into a defensive formation around Velar Prime. Repair crews worked on the ships that had been damaged in the battle. 37 human ships had been destroyed. Over 2,000 crew members had been killed. Their names were recorded, their families notified, their service honored. Dongwu read every name personally. He held a brief ceremony on the bridge of the Indomitable. It was not fancy. There were no speeches, no music, no flags. He simply read the names aloud, one by one, and the crew stood in silence and listened. When he finished, he said only one thing. They did not die for territory. They did not die for resources. They did not die for politics. They died because good people needed help, and they chose to answer. There is no better reason. The crew saluted, and that was all. On the surface, the rebuilding began immediately. Human engineers worked beside Volari workers, clearing rubble, repairing buildings, restoring infrastructure. It was hard, slow, exhausting work. The humans worked with a kind of steady determination that the Volari had never seen before. They did not stop when they were tired. They did not stop when it rained. They did not stop at all. Sujin spent 3 weeks on Velar Prime. By the time she left, the field hospital she had set up had treated over 12,000 patients. The little Volari child who had grabbed her hand on the first day came to see her off. The child had learned one word in the human language. She said it over and over as Sujin walked toward her transport. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sujin knelt down and hugged her. "You are going to be okay," she whispered, and she meant it. The news of what happened at Valar Prime spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species, every empire, every council and federation heard the story. The Valari had been attacked. They had sent a message to Earth, and the humans had sent everything. Not a patrol ship, not a task force, not a reasonable, measured response. Everything. 1,200 warships, 1,500 total vessels, the entire Terran Navy, for a planet that was not theirs, for a people who were not their own, for a debt that the Valari had never asked to be repaid. The galaxy had always seen humans as strange. They were loud, emotional, unpredictable, and sometimes reckless. They fought among themselves constantly. They could never seem to agree on anything. They were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced. There were older civilizations, bigger empires, more powerful fleets. But after Valar Prime, something changed. The other species of the galaxy looked at humanity differently. Not with fear exactly, though there was some of that. Not with admiration exactly, though there was plenty of that too. It was something else, something harder to name. It was the understanding that if you helped a human, they would never forget it. And if you hurt someone a human cared about, they would come for you with everything they had. Months later, Yuna returned to Earth for the first time since the attack. She walked into Terran Command and found Tejo waiting for her in the hallway. He looked tired, but happy. He saluted, and she laughed and hugged him instead. "Thank you," she said, "for listening to my message, for passing it on. If you had not done that—" Tejo shook his head. "I just pushed a button. The Admiral made the decision." "No," Yuna said. "You could have ignored it. You could have filed it away and gone back to your coffee, but you did not. You listened. That is where it all started." Tejo thought about that for a moment. Then he smiled. "I suppose you are right." Yuna went to see Admiral Suho that afternoon. She found him in his office, sitting behind his desk, reading reports. He looked up when she entered, and gestured for her to sit. "Welcome home, Admiral," she said. "I have one question." "Go ahead." "Why did you send the whole fleet? You could have sent 50 ships, 100. That would have been enough to make a statement. Why did you send everything?" Suho leaned back in his chair and looked at her for a long time. His face was calm and steady, the face of a man who had made a decision and had never once doubted it. "Because 50 ships would have said we cared a little," he said. 100 ships would have said we cared a lot. But sending everything, that says something different. That says the Valari are not alone. That says no one in this galaxy is alone, not if they have ever stood beside us." He paused. "The Valari came to us with one ship and saved billions. I was not going to insult that kindness with a half measure." Yuna nodded. She stood up, shook his hand, and walked out. She did not need to say anything else. Some debts are not paid with words. They are paid with everything you have. And humanity always overpays.